We're talking today with Josh Brunn of Gurnee, Illinois, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Josh, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born on September 17th, 1974 in Downport, Iowa, at St. John's Hospital.
Very good.
Came into the world, I think my mom said I came in early in the morning. I was ready to go, she said. So.
All right. Did you grow up in Davenport, or did you move around?
We moved around a bit. At 13, we moved away from the Quad City area, and we moved to a no-name town in Georgia. And actually, that's where I enlisted in the Navy, was from Georgia. Part of it was to get out of Georgia. Part of it was because I didn't have much heading in my life at that point.
Okay. So what was your family doing for a living when you were growing up?
Truck driver. She was married to her first husband, or her second husband at the time, Daly, who was a truck driver, and then they started a truck driving business of their own, and they started getting contracts and everything like that, and then that marriage didn't work out so well. She tried to sustain the business as best she could. Eventually it just didn't work out. So they closed shop, she met somebody, and we went to Georgia.
Okay. All right. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Heard County High School in Georgia. It was the high school, and it was named after the county because it was the only one in the county.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there for a while, and then I actually went to Riverside Military Academy in Gainesville, Georgia. Did 2 years there, and then I got out of the military academy and I graduated from West Hall High School, which is in Hall County, Georgia.
Okay. Now, while you were at the military high school, how much sort of military training did you actually get? Was there a version of like the high school ROTC thing, or?
It was a full-on Army JROTC.
Okay.
It was a boarding school. We
Mm-hmm.
lived there, we ate there, we wore uniforms daily. After class, we had an hour of athletics, and then we had an hour of drill. Every Sunday we did pass and reviews, so we'd put on our Sunday best uniforms, our Class A's, and get out there and form up and do a parade for everybody. Wednesdays and Sundays we'd get what's called, civilian days, where you can go out in town and everything like that. But you always did so in your uniform, so it was, if they knew when we were coming, they'd see us a mile away.
All right. And why did you leave that?
Well, part of it was cost. So my mom was footing most of the bill for the school. I think most of it was really cost. Just it got pretty expensive going there, and so.
Yeah. So it wasn't really that you didn't like it so much as just.
I'm a pretty adaptive individual,
okay.
Honestly, to my environment. I find my niche, and I just kind of operate inside of that. So I didn't dislike it at all. I made quite a few friends there.
All right. Now, what did you do after you finished high school?
A lot of different stuff. It was just I went, putting shingles on roofs in the middle of summer in Georgia heat, which wasn't fun. For a while, I worked on diesel engines in a shop for a while, and changing brake pads on cars and whatnot, just doing small jobs in the shop for them. I did a really interesting job I had was sandblasting water towers for a while. So the county would have an old water tower that needs a new paint job. So we'd go up there, we'd blast out all the old paint off and put the new paint on. Interior, exterior, it's pretty interesting work, but it's also pretty nasty work because when you're inside of the tank and you're sandblasting, all that sand's going everywhere. You've got a helmet on, you're pumping oxygen in, but it's still just not good enough. You're still spitting out dirt at the end of the day. It just wasn't a good job.
Yeah.
So, in my life really wasn't, I didn't have any goals. I didn't have any career plans or anything like that at that point in my life. I was going from day to day, getting paid cash under the table for half these jobs. I eventually said, I need a job that's going to take me somewhere, and it's going to be reliable. It's going to be there for me, and I can be there for it.
Mm-hmm.
And none of these other jobs are doing it for me because it's all pretty shady stuff. So I went to the recruitment office and raised my hand for the Navy.
Okay. So how'd you wind up picking the Navy?
It's one of those calling things for me, really. I actually was supposed to go to the Marine Corps. I had a ship out date and everything, and then I pulled out of that. when I was a kid, I had a book of Navy ships. And my grandfather, he was a World War II veteran. He served on the USS Wisconsin. He was a gunner's mate, second class on there during World War II. And he got me this book of U.S. Navy warships. And the front page of it was a full broadside being done by the Wisconsin. So you've got all three of the 16-inch mounts, all 9 barrels just pointed to the port side. Boom. There's muzzle flash. You can see the shockwave over the water. I'm looking at it. I'm a little kid. I'm like, that's cool. And you flip through the book and you see aircraft carriers, the big, the Enterprise and the Kitty Hawk were the big carriers in this book during its time of publishing and everything like that. And then there's one picture of a frigate. And frigate's got a really unique construction to it. It's one of the smaller ships. We call them the torpedo catchers because we're going to sacrifice the frigate before the carrier. And there's a bit of protection where the superstructure turns into the weather deck on the port and starboard sides and everything like that. And there's this picture of this frigate cutting through the waves, like just cutting through some old nasty old school sea story kind of waves. And there was I don't know if it was my mind envisioning me there or if it was just actually there in the book, but a sailor kind of just standing there, like braving the elements on the weather deck, which he wouldn't have been at this time. So I think it's more my kid's imagination picturing this and everything like that. But I remember that vividly, that image. And then, just when it came time, I was like, I got to get some bearing in my life, and I got to get some heading, like I said, and I went to the Navy. Okay. So that's where it worked out.
Now, when you went in, were you able to select kinds of training that you would get, or did you have to pass a bunch of aptitude tests first, or how did that work?
There is an aptitude test that the recruiter's going to give you, and that's just to determine where your skill set lies. Yeah. So, somebody that's been the water polo champion for 20 years isn't trying to become, something they're not. It's kind of tailor what what you're good at towards the needs of the Navy. Because, at the end of the day, it is going to fall to the needs of the Navy.
So they could have had you just painting ships.
I could have been painting ships. Thankfully, I tested well enough on the aptitude test. There was a big push for nukes at the time. So if you scored over I think it was 72, then on your aptitude test, then they started, hey, are you interested in nuclear? And send you down to Florida for training on that. I really wasn't interested in nukes, operating reactors or anything like that. Part of it was like, that's not what I'm looking for. Part of it was, I don't want to be around that stuff. Because there's a lot of unknown for me at that time. They've got protocols in place and everything to keep people safe and procedures and everything like that. It's not like Star Trek, where you can just walk into the reactor core.
Yeah, but it's still all made by people, so you never know what'll happen.
It is made by people. Indeed, human error. So I tested well enough. I actually went into the Navy with the job role of gas turbine systems technician electrical, which really intrigued me because we're using gas turbine engines to push a boat through the water. I'd been to air shows before. I knew gas turbine engines were used on helicopters and they were used on airplanes. I even saw a 57 Chevy pickup with a gas turbine strapped to it go flying down a runway in like 3 seconds flat. I never once envisioned these things on a Navy ship pushing it through the water because, it was all boilers and everything is what I was thinking, diesel engines. So I went in and I did my first commitment was 5 years, and I worked on, that's when I was stationed on the USS Cowpens. We did 2 Westpac deployments, which is Western Pacific. So we were home ported in San Diego. We went to various places, Pearl Harbor, Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand. Twice I made the trip to Australia. I've been to places I never thought I'd be. Just Cabo San Lucas, Acapulco.
Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit. Okay. So when do you actually join the Navy? When do you start training?
Immediately. Like day one, we got off the bus. It wasn't full metal jacket. Drill sergeant up in our face yelling and everything like that so much, but it was that was present in the training, and it was we can't put you in an actual stressful situation, but we can generate artificial stress on you and see how well you perform.
Right. So what year was that?
That was 1995.
Okay. And where were you training?
Great Lakes.
Okay.
Quarterdeck of the Navy. That's the spot. That's where everybody goes these days. They shut down San Diego and Orlando. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. And you said so. You basically you show up there on the base. And what are the first few days like?
First few days is just the processing, making sure you're supposed to be there, making sure you are there, making sure you have your ditty bag, all your personal effects that you're going to need. Here's your blue sweatpants that say Navy all over them. Here's your dungarees, all that stuff. Here's some showers, some soap, some athletic attire. Here's a new pair of shoes. Keep them shiny the rest of your life, kind of deal. Yeah, it's fast paced. You're moving. It's very line up, stand here, open your bag kind of process. You're out of control of any decision making. The process is very by the book for them. And when you're bringing in 300, 400 people at a time, you have to have that procedure in place. You can't say, okay, go here next, go there next. You're gonna have people run. It's worse than high school in between classes. You'd have that perpetually. So yeah, they line you up and you move as a group. From day one, they start marching you. You're not any good at it, but they do start working on it right there immediately. So.
Yeah. Did it help you that you had been to that military high school?
Absolutely. I felt I had an edge up on everybody just because I already knew how to march. I knew how to call cadence. I knew how to stay in step. I knew, there's actually a set distance that you're going to step, 30 to 36 inches, in a marching pace, depending on the size of your platoon and everything like that. I knew the commands. I knew not to anticipate the commands. So while they're doing left, and people start turning to the left, I'm still standing there looking forward, and then they'd give the execute command to face, and then you move left. So I didn't fall prey to that little game. But the only reason is because I'd had previous exposure,
right.
So.
Okay. And then how long is the initial stage of the training, the boot camp part?
So boot camp itself takes about 2.5 months, depending on the processing. It's a lot different these days. I can get more into that later if you want. When I was there, it was about 2 to 2.5 months, and that's if you went straight through. They had a recycling program that set you back if you're shown to be not keeping up. You have struggles in some areas and whatnot, and so it's very regimented. Everything's planned out for you. It's easy. You show up and do your job.
And what sort of discipline was exercised? What did they do when people screwed up?
Exercise. Pain's a hell of a motivator, and they would exercise us until we were just hurting, and then you'd realize the action was incorrect. And it wasn't just that wasn't the go-to. That was the go-to if you messed up really bad. It wasn't uncommon for an entire division to be disciplined as a unit because it's team mentality. Mm-hmm.
So if one person messes up, you may all have to go through that process?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then did you police yourselves? There are people who were screwing up. Were there ways of encouraging them to do better?
Because of the way everything was executed, it didn't take long for that to catch on. For everybody, next thing you know, teamwork's just happening. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to help you with your hospital corners. I'm making your rack because you know what? I don't want to do push-ups anymore. I'm still sore from yesterday's push-ups. So.
All right. Okay. Now, at this point, do you know what kind of training you're going to move on to, or does that come at the end of that time? Or?
Yes and no. Okay. So some of us came in, we had jobs. The others came in undesignated. Now, that doesn't mean they just go anywhere. There's undesignated by classification. You could be a seaman undesignated, a fireman undesignated, an airman undesignated. So if you come in undesignated as a seaman, you're going to be in one of the most storied rates in the Navy, and that's a bosun's mate. If you come in undesignated as a fireman, you're going to go to engineering. If you're undesignated airman, you're going to go to an air det. And then construction battalions as well. Mm-hmm. They had undesignated too. So, okay. And the idea behind that was you didn't have a set job at the time that you were enlisting that was available for you. It wasn't that you weren't qualified. It's just your skill set wasn't attractive, but you were attractive. Mm-hmm. So we're going to bring you in. We're going to put you in this undesignated situation. You'll be able to strike what we call striker rate, which is basically after a year of being on board the ship, you can test for an advancement in a rate of your choosing. Mm-hmm. So. All right.
Now, in your case, you already had your training, your slot lined up?
My training was all lined up for gas turbine school. So I got finished with boot camp in May. Yeah, April or May. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a gray area.
Probably May if you enlisted in March. So.
Yeah.
Okay. And then where do you do that engine training?
I just crossed the street. I went from Recruit Training Command, Great Lakes, to, at the time, it was Naval Station Training Center Command. And it was all one big command, and just right there next door. So I didn't go far.
Okay. And then what did that stage of training consist of?
So the artificial stress is pulled away. It's pulled back some, not fully gone. You still have, you're still in the military, but you do still getting some more of those civilian privileges that were taken away from you during boot camp. They get handed back to you. So now you can start dressing like a civilian. And I'll tell you what, it's quite comical to see how differently people dress from different areas. What's the trend in this region? They're all meshed together. So you start getting you get that back. You're a little more in charge of your evenings after you've finished all your duties and everything like that you need to, and you're on liberty, as we called it in the Navy. So you could go out. You were responsible for completing any A school assignments that you had. You were still responsible for showing up for your watch. If you're on duty, you didn't get to go out. You stand on your own watch. The start of your 24-hour watches starts the minute you get out of boot camp. People don't realize that. That's, however long you're in, you're going to still continue that watch rotation.
Okay. Now, what kind of things would you do while you were on watch at that point?
Early, you're just maintaining the quarterdeck, controlling the traffic of people in and out, making sure they're respecting tradition when they come on board. Turn and salute the flag, salute, turn and salute the officer of the deck, salute, hold up your ID, request permission to come aboard. They'd wave you on board.
Well, this is actually on ships, or is this just language you're using for going on and off the base?
This is language that we use to begin. It's all part of the enculturation of going into the Navy. Mm-hmm. So you're in a building, you're on the ground, but your building is a ship, mm-hmm. and you're crossing the quarterdeck, which is basically you're coming in the front door of the building, and right there at the foyer, there's a guy behind the podium. He's got the ensign behind him, and you're going to salute the ensign. And you've got to watch. You're in your dress, or you're working, your Class Bs, maybe your Class As, and you're standing there presentable, and you're inspection ready. Some of the other duties, when you're not standing there, because you probably do maybe a 5-hour shift there, watching people come on board, documenting entries in the ship's log, or you're maintaining the ship. You're going around doing cleaners, or sweepers, as we call it, just big cleanup field day, so to speak, and just keeping it ship shape. Cleaning up after all the messes that people are leaving behind because they're not on watch. All
right. Okay. And so and then with the training part of it, what you're actually learning?
So I had a lot of training initially when I came in as gas turbines, because first thing we did was we went through what's called Engineering Common Core, where you learn the vernacular of what's going on in an engine room, what's a valve, the color coding of the pipes, what each color designates, how do you know that's a JP5 fuel oil line? How do you know that's a lube oil line? You learn this stuff. You learn basic principles of pumps and motors and what the difference between the two are. And then most importantly, you learn basic egress, because you're in an engine room, you're dealing with a lot of flammable liquids, and you're compressing it in a real tight area and making it go boom to create propulsion through the water. So there's potential for really bad stuff to happen here. And so you have to learn how to combat this, combat your fire types if they were to happen, how to egress from the space if it gets out of control and everything like that. So one of the things we did was we went into this EEBD trainer, and you walk in, you've got a little air bottle on your hip. It's called a SEED, Supplementary Egress, Emergency Egress Device. And it gives you about 3 to 5 minutes of air. You don't know. It's kind of I'm using this to get to that so I can get out of here, mm-hmm. kind of moment. And lights go out. They start pumping in, the artificial fog, but it kind of, that triggers the reaction in you that you've been training for. And so you pop out your seat, you put it in your mouth, you go through a dark compartment, you find your EEBD, emergency egress device, and it's this canvas hood with a plastic face shield on it. It's got a plastic box on the back that scrubs the air and provides you oxygen, and it's good for 15 minutes if I recall correctly. You put this on, you fire it off, they tell you to tap the key up against the lens on your hood, so you know it's there. You know, it's the little details that they're trying to get you to pick up on. Don't just have faith that I pulled it. And so you're tapping this little tricks, and it's running, and then you make your way out of the compartment, out into the air, and then there's steps you have to do after that. Just because you're out of this, the smoke contaminated environment doesn't mean you're safe. You take this thing off, you've got saturated oxygen on your hair. They even told us the day before, don't wear hair gel, don't use hairspray, don't wear a lot of perfume or anything like that, because you're going to have saturated oxygen in you. So you take it off, and you're just standing out there for about 3 to 5 minutes, moving your fingers through your hair, trying to get the saturated oxygen out, so there's not, somebody lighting up a cigarette next to you. You're the next 7-Up commercial starring Michael Jackson.
Right. So shaving your head might not be a bad idea at that point.
Initially when you come in, they do cut your hair real short. There's a lot of reasons behind that. You figure out which one helps you get through your day. No, you're going to get short hair. But growing it back is kind of a mark that you're not in boot camp anymore, so you're probably not going to shave your head.
All right. So was there did you have to spend a lot of time studying and memorizing, or could you just go to class and do it and pick it up and then move on?
Some of it came naturally for me. Like I said, I used to work in small engine shops. My stepfather, Mark, when I was a kid, I did a lot of cutting and grinding and welding and just putting stuff together, taking stuff apart, working on engines, stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff, the principles I already kind of knew. I even took shop class when I was a freshman in high school. So the internal combustion engine I was familiar with, a lot of the principles of it. I'm not saying I was an ASE mechanic, but I could probably give them a run for their money. But there was parts of it that you do have to study, because there's specific systems. And one of the tricks you do in engineering is your systems. You know your pipelines. You can walk the engine and you can say, this goes to this goes to that. And you need to have that skill. And the way you develop that skill is you get a pen and paper, and you go right to the beginning of that system, and you draw the first component, and then you walk the system with it, and you draw this system out. And you don't have to chase the system each time. The first time you do it, just to get familiar with where things are, and then after that, you start redrawing that system over and over again until you can just pull it up from memory. To this day, I could probably still draw the lube oil cooling system from my first ship, because we did this so much, and like the principles are still there. Just talking about this, a lot of these things are coming back to my mind right now. And we're talking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
All right. And so how long did you spend at that school?
So the engineering common core school, I think, was 4 to 6 weeks. And then we went to, after engineering common core, we went on to mechanical core, common core school, which is where we learned more about valves. We learned more about pumps, bearings, boilers, and stuff like that. And that was 6 weeks. And then I went to gas turbine systems technician school. And that's where I first started learning the basic principles of a gas turbine engine and the difference between the Brayton cycle and the Otto cycle, and stuff like that. And that's where I really had to open up my books and start learning, because I had never worked on a gas turbine. Like, you've got a compressor section, and it compresses the air. You've got the combustion section, it's making it go boom. You've got the power turbine. Okay, what's a power turbine doing? So there's spots in here that I'm having to learn and everything like that, but I'm actually intrigued by this stuff. Really good training. The instructors we had were hands down, so they knew their equipment in and out. We even had, in our barracks, we had actual engine in there just on display that you could look at. It's no longer there. In fact, the barracks are no longer there. But that engine, it had cross sections on it because we used big LM2500, I think DC-10s, old DC-10 planes. We used those for main propulsion, and then we used Allison 501K gas turbine engines for electricity on the ship. So we got movement, we've got electrical power, we're good. We can go out and do our job. But they had these things there, so you could sit there with your diagrams. You can get hands-on and kind of get familiar with your equipment itself, and take the gray matter, the in-between of, I'm telling you this is what it does, and you can actually see it and kind of get concrete out of it.
Now, when you're at this level of training, where most of the people there kind of like you, they had just come into the Navy and they were going through the training, or did you have some people who were coming in to add a skill?
At this level, in my class, we had one guy was doing a cross rate. He had been undesignated fireman, which we talked about earlier a little bit. He's he's decided he wanted to go. He was on a gas turbine ship and he wanted to be a GSM, which puts him in charge of maintaining the engines and repairing them. And so that's what he was there to strike as. So he was kind of familiar with the stuff, but he had worked in Aux Division, so he didn't really work on the engines. So a lot of it was new for him to learn as well. And we actually had some, I can't remember which Navy they were from now. We had some foreign students in our class as well, because they had just bought a couple of our old frigates and they needed to learn how to maintain them. So.
Okay, all right. So when do you finish this round of training?
Well, so I had that. That was a 2-month class. We're in the classrooms. We're being taught the principles and everything like that. And then we actually had a working engine room. They could run the engines. We're learning the air compressors, the L packs, the H packs. We're learning the lube oil system, the fuel oil system, the waste heat system that we use because we don't have boilers now. So we still need steam on a ship. And so they had this whole working engine room. Like it was modeled after a CG 47 USS Ticonderoga. That was the first of the Ticonderoga class cruisers with the gas turbine engines in it. So they had a water brake on these engines, so they could fire the engines up and run them, and they had this water brake to keep them from overspeeding. So, it was really, I'm telling you, it's hands-on. I've never had training like this before. I'd gone to college before the Navy, and it was nothing like that. It's open the book and learn. That was college for me, and that didn't work out well. So now I'm here, I'm hands-on, I'm turning wrenches on this stuff. I'm engaged. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Okay. So do you get training beyond that, or do you get sent to a ship, or what happens next?
So at this point, if you're going gas turbine systems technician mechanical, you go to your first ship once you've completed that pipeline. In my case, I was going electrical, and so I had another 4 months of training to go and learn basic electricity, and like to this day, I still use it in my current job. So, and that was again hands-on, some of the best training. It's you learn you basic AC theory, DC theory, all the way through solid state semiconductors, all of that stuff. You're learning logic circuits, Boolean algebra, all of it, and there's a lot of hands-on application in that as well. They have working switchboards where you're playing with electricity and whatnot. And then 4 months of that, and then I actually left. I came here March 7th, 1995. I came to Great Lakes, and then it was February before I left, and I went to my first ship.
Okay, and what was the first ship?
USS Cowpens, CG-63 out of San Diego.
Okay, describe the ship a little bit.
Oh, gosh, she's big, and she's tall, and she's skinny. When they did the first sea trials on the Ticonderoga, CG-47, when she did her first flank 3 figure 8 and she started leaning into the turn, they didn't know if she was coming back because the superstructure is so tall on these things. They are the battleship of the Navy these days. I'm not trying to take anything away from the USS Missouri or anything like that. Those ships are legendary. But times have changed, and it's not pull up next to them and just, at the end of the day, the smoke clears, who's still afloat, they're the winner. Those days are gone. We started to see some of that. If you go back to, was it?
It was the Falklands War back in
1993. Okay. In '93, when we were at war, they were retrofitting the battleships because they were getting recommissioned and put back into service, but they were adding called a VLS, vertical launch system, to these ships. And so that's the modern day warfare scenario now. It's not, like I said, pull up alongside, big guns, airplanes flying zigzag and coming down with guns shooting and everything like that. It's more, you may not even see your combatant these days. So she had a 5-inch on the front, she had a 5-inch on the bow, she had a 5-inch on the stern. We had harpoon for ship to ship. We had missile launchers crisscrossed on the back for that, and then we had VLS magazines on there too for vertical. We had torpedo hatches. These ships were equipped to handle just about everything. everything's surface warfare and air warfare wise. They were equipped. Subsurface, not as equipped as some of the others, but no other ship was completing the mission like these. So they were amazing ships. You spend your first 6 months lost on it. It's not like a carrier where you spend your first tour on it lost, because it's not that big. But oftentimes we would be doing flight support for the carriers. We'd be sitting off their fantail, just aircraft support, helping bringing the aircrafts in. The capabilities on this ship were just amazing. I had no idea that this stuff was even possible, that what this ship could do. So they were one of the first ships to get the spy radar on them. 3-dimensional radar, just amazing how many tracks it could handle at one time. And you learn this going through when you're on the ship, just because everyone, even though you have your job, you want to know the other jobs because everything's just so cool. It was for me. It was 4 years of geekhood. I was geeking out on everything. I came on board as a GSE FA, fireman apprentice at E2. I'd done enough time as an E1. I automatically advanced to E2, and I started working my way up the ranks. I got assigned to my workshop. It was not CE. It was EMO 3, engineering maintenance 03 shop. EMO 1 was engine room 1. EMO 2 was engine room 2. EMO 3 was the gas turbines electrician shop, the GSEs. So we didn't have an engine room. We had all the engine rooms. We had the generators, the electrical distribution system. We had it all. We were in charge of all the controls and the monitors for these systems. Anytime something went down, there was a GSE on site or at the scene, so to speak, with the GSMs working with them on getting this up, because the job was split into 2 groups. You had the mechanical guys. They're going to make sure the engine's in place, it's rotating like it should, take care of the systems and everything like that. But you've got these control consoles with all these buttons on it and these levers and everything like that, and they don't know this stuff. So that's where we came in. We took care of that stuff. We make sure the control signals are actually, is the problem mechanical? Is it electrical? It's similar to an auto mechanic. You got one guy that specializes on the actual combustion cycle of the engine, and the other guy works on the computers of the car to make sure, okay, the fuel pump's not working. Well, is the fuel pump bad, or is it just not getting the signal? Stuff. That's the division between what we did and what they did.
Okay. Now, how long did it take you to kind of feel like you knew what you were doing?
My whole tour. There's just so much to learn. And what's going to happen is my first qualification was engine room monitor. So every hour for 4 or 5 hours, depending on what the shift was. Sometimes it was a 12-hour shift. You don't know just what your situation is. Every hour I'd walk around with the clipboard and I would go to all the equipment and I would take readings off the dials. And if something was running out, it's a good way to make sure everything's running within parameters for you, so you can see if you have issues. Hey, these engines are running a little hot. We need to figure out why. It's kind of preventive rather than reactive kind of maintenance on the equipment. And you did various. You take oil samples every mid-watch. You take an oil sample and look at everything, make sure there's no metal bits or water or anything like that in the oil that shouldn't be. And you change over your strainers, and you had various tasks that you would do on top of maintaining the engine room, and that was your watch. And then during the day, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., you're doing your daily job as well on top of that. So you could wake up at 6 a.m., get ready, have your breakfast. 7 a.m., you're ready for work. You go to work, and you get done working at 5 p.m. and go to a watch and have a 5-hour watch and then get to bed. It could be a long day for you. Or it could be you've got a full work day, you get about 3 hours of rest, and then you're up and you've got a 5-hour watch in the middle of the night. That's the job. That's what it takes to keep the boat cutting through the water and protecting our freedoms. That's what it is.
Okay. And what was your home port at that point?
San Diego.
All right. And about how many people in the complement for the ship?
Without the air detachment, we were sitting around 250, 300.
Okay.
With the air detachment, probably upwards of 350.
All right. And did they have women serving on the ship, or all men?
Initially, we didn't, and that was a big eye opener. The enculturation, when I first got to the ship, it was all male crew, and we did all kinds of male stuff. I'm not going into details on that because that's not the Navy we are anymore. The Navy is, so to speak. And so they did bring females on, and it was really interesting to watch this develop. I kind of sat just sat back and, Big Navy said this is what's coming. You fight it all you want. Big Navy said this is coming. So I kind of took the role of I'm going to observe what's going to happen and see how this works. I don't want to be the guy that's pushing up against this change because this change is coming regardless. So they brought on our first 2 female officers was our DCA. She was brought on as JO, and our supply officer was brought on as a senior officer. And they kind of worked for a while, and then they started bringing junior, some of the enlisted on, and they started with a QM1. She was the first female enlisted on the ship, and it was really interesting to hear a female across the 1MC, which is the ship's announcing system, for the first time. Because it's, they're there, and when they're part of the crew, and they're doing their job and everything like that, but the first time you hear that female voice crack, it was unique, so to speak. But it worked out really well because they brought the senior officers in, which, the embracing is going to be more of a pro than a con by bringing in the senior leadership at first and then bring in the junior, start integrating with the crew and everything like that. It was definitely a big change to start bringing women onto combatant ships. So
now, how did the crew respond to all that?
Actually, really well. Surprisingly, really well. I mean, you have the old salts. This is the way it's always been. Why we got to change stuff? And you're always going to have conflict with change. You're not going to not. But overall, I think it was really effective integration. Everybody, I had no problems being in the gym. Sometimes the women were working harder than me. Sometimes they were working harder than the other guys that I'd been relying on for the longest time. Part of it was they have a chip on their shoulder. They've got something to prove. They know the fight that they're in for. And I saw that. And so for me, I was like, I don't want to be the guy they're fighting against. This, like I said, this change is coming. It's going to happen. So I'm getting in there with them, teach them what I can, help them out, kind of deal. And I think most of the crew really embraced that mentality as well. And it was an effective integration. By the end of the first year of the integration, I think we were sitting 30% females on the crew.
All right. So now you had mentioned briefly or earlier various places you were going. So you spent some time in San Diego, but you spent a lot of time at sea and going to other ports and other places? Yeah,
San Diego was the home port, but those ships aren't built to be pierside. It's more expensive to keep them pierside than it is to keep them underway. So, if you were in port for 2 weeks, hey, it's a vacay. We're on holiday here. So I went to places like we'd go to Santa Barbara. We'd go up to Washington, Seattle, Washington one time for Fleet Week. We went to Cabo San Lucas quite a few times. We went to Acapulco. We went to Puerto Vallarta. Just all these local ports, places that I'd never even thought about going to. San Francisco was one of them. What am I doing in San Francisco? Had a great time. Met some great people and just, had experiences and everything like that. Monterey, California was one of our captain's favorite little spots to go to. It wasn't uncommon for him to have a meeting up there, and so we're taking the ship. It'd be cheaper to drive, but it's really good exercise. Crew needs to continue to work. When you're underway, you're drilling, drill. You're a war combatant ship. You may not be in war, but you need to be ready for war. So it's a good opportunity to get us out there and get us drilling. We would pull off of San Clemente Island and do exercises with various other ships, aircraft, and even marine detachments. We do just different stuff with them. It was a lot of fun. Did two different Westpacks on there, and went to all kinds of crazy places. Spent a lot of time in the North Arabian Gulf, looking at oil platforms and making sure they were safe and secure. We pulled into port in Bahrain, Jebel Ali, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. When you're in the Gulf, though, your time in between ports is really stretched because you're there for a minute. That's getting out there is exercises and making sure the crew's ready, kind of stuff. And okay, go have a week. Here's 4 days in Hong Kong. One of them is going to be your duty day, and the rest of them are for you to relax and reinvigorate yourself, and do so responsibly. We need you back here, kind of mentality. But once you're in the Gulf, it's your liberty's restricted to the base that we have there because tensions were high, and we didn't need international incidences sparking these tensions even further. So, okay, we're in for 4 days, we're out for 4 weeks. We're in for 3 days, we're out for 4 weeks kind of mentality.
Okay. And roughly when was it then that you were in the Gulf on that tour?
My first deployment was in 97,
Okay.
I think. I got there in 96, yeah, 97 was my first deployment, and 99 was my second deployment.
Okay. Now, do these count as sort of part of the aftermath of Desert Storm, or?
Yeah, it was after Desert Storm. It was, keeping our presence out there.
Right.
It was all low incident operations. There wasn't really any challenging stuff during those first two deployments. Hey, we're out here in the water. We're doing our job. We're communicating with other vessels out here. We're doing our station keeping, all that. But that was really it. It was like I said. There was a couple exciting points, but nothing really developed into much.
Okay. Now, were you primarily concerned with Iraq at this point, or Iran, or both of them?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you at that point. At that point in my life, I was in the engine rooms. The only time I saw the sun was when I came up for a cigarette break. Yeah, ooh, fresh air. Let me get a cigarette here real quick. It's nice to breathe this fresh air. Kind of a time. But yeah, that, or we did do a couple Steel Beach picnics to kind of break the monotony, the routine. So that's where basically the cooks, the CSs on the ship, they would bring their food out to the fantail, which is the big flat back part of the boat, and they'd fire up some grills and some tables, and if you had a ship's band, they start playing music, or people are just hanging out up there and just enjoying themselves and their company, and they're doing so in their civilian attires, just kind of a mindset thing. Yeah, you can look out, but all you see is water. We did so in relatively safe waters and whatnot. Did have a couple swim calls. That was a lot of fun. I'm not sure what body of water we were in when that happened. I think it might have been the IO, the Indian Ocean. They drop the lifelines on the side and they let you jump in the water, go swimming. They've got the Jacob's ladder down the side so you can climb back out and jump back in. And just, everybody's making fools of themselves. We're putting on goggles, going underwater, looking at the screws and seeing how big they actually are in the ship, because we've never been in the dry dock with it since we've been on board. And we're like, wow, this is amazing.
All right. And then, so you're in the Gulf. And then let's see, you were in Australia.
Yeah, we went. My first time to Australia, we stopped at Perth and we spent 4 days there, and then we took some time and we went over to Sydney and we spent 4 days there, and that was really unique opportunity for me. Never been to Australia. Crocodile Dundee was still a big movie when I went in, so we're like, crikey, we're going to get it on, kind of mentality. Everybody's just really excited to go to Australia because a lot of people on the ship had never been to Australia, and it was one of those exotic places. The other aspect was a lot of ships don't actually make it to Australia, so the idea is you have to have enough gas at the end of your deployment in the ship to get there and get back to your detachment so you can refuel, and it takes a lot of gas to get to Australia. So a lot of the operations we did, we were monitoring our fuel consumption, to make sure we had budget, money in the gas wallet so that we could fill the ship up, go down there, come back within regulations. And we got the green light to do so we did it. It was a lot of fun. My second time, we went to Darwin and then Townsville, and that was even more fun. Went on a couple different exotic, tours and whatnot. Got to see these crocodiles jumping out of the water, trying to eat meat. They throw a stick of meat over the side, and these crocodiles come out of this. You couldn't even see them, and then here they come. You're like, I'm not falling off this thing. Coming out of high water, I am not falling off.
That's sort of the very far northern tip of Australia, right? Kind of
yes,
close to New Guinea, across from New Guinea, and
yes, the northeastern area. So that was really cool. Went through some of the state parks and saw some of the indigenous animals and everything like that. It was just really cool. So.
All right. Are there other particular things that stand out in your memory from the time on the cowpens?
I learned a lot about myself when I was on the cowpens. I had a lot of great people that were around me and helped me out. I had some growing pains when I first got there because I had one mindset of what the Navy was going to be, and it was the wrong mindset. And I took my hits, did my time, so to speak, and but I was able to come back from that because the people I had around me Not only were they able to, like, hey, keep a positive mind, keep working on this, and you'll be okay, mindset, but when it came to supporting me with the command, so that the CEO didn't think I was just, hey, here's a deadbeat, and we just need to let him go through his paces and get rid of him. They continued to stand up for me there and let me move forward. So, seeing that, I really learned what it was to be a part of a team. Because like I was really new on the ship when my incidents happened, so nobody knew me. But here these guys are standing up for me. Yeah, I worked really hard when I was on the ship. I learned a lot about myself there. I actually, I should have been an E5 when I left the Cowpens, but I wasn't. I was an E4 because of the issues I'd caused in the beginning. I'd gotten busted in rate and gone backwards in pay. But in lieu of all of that, when I transferred off of that ship as an E4, I still have my EL letter from the CO. So, yeah, it was an awesome time.
All right. Now, for you, was it just learning the system, or was it a maturity thing? Or
it was a maturity thing. Okay. The exact reason I joined was because I needed the discipline and the structure in my life. I didn't have that on my own. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now, when you finish the time on the Cowpens, where do you go next?
I came back to Great Lakes because I was a glutton for punishment, and during my time on the Cowpens, there was opportunities for us to work with the electronics technicians, the ETs on the boat, and see they would come down, like we had questions about stuff and we just didn't fully understand it, and they would come down and help explain it to us. Eventually, I got to the point where I was like, I want to do that guy's job. I want to be the guy they're calling on. I don't want to be the guy that's calling on people. You call it the alpha gene if you want. That's the way I operate. So towards the end of the completion of my tour on the Cowpens, I ran a request chit, just a simple request chit to re-enlist as an ET, mm-hmm. And it got approved. So they cut me orders. I came back to Great Lakes. I spent almost another year here learning more about electronics. In the beginning of that, school kind of came naturally for me because I already had it from the GSE side of my training. Yeah. But there was more to it because like the electronics portion, I went through that fine. I still retained a lot of that. Some of it was refresher for me, doing like math with hexadecimal and stuff. But then we started getting into radars and radios. And I was going through the school line at a very unique time where you picked which pipe you went. You either go comms or radar. And during the testing, I did really well on the radar side, and I struggled on the comm side. So I went comms, because that just made sense. But the radar kind of came naturally to me. It made sense. Now, I'm not saying I'm a whiz when it comes to radars. I barely remember that stuff because I didn't train a lot of it. But I wanted the challenge. That's why I came here. I wanted to be that guy, and I needed to challenge myself. And I do better when I'm challenged than when I'm just kind of idly going through the paces. So I went to comms and we learned about HF, we learned about UHF, communication, all of it line of sight stuff. And I got done. Came time to pick orders after the end of our training, and you could see a lot of people in the class were sweating because Bahrain was one of the top billets on the orders, and they were sweating because these were all new guys just coming in the Navy. Now I'm the fleet returnee. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting there. I've got my chevron on. I've been to sea. These guys are like, GSC3, and everything like that. And so because I was a fleet returnee, I got first pick on the orders. Mm-hmm. Everybody else had to fall to GPA, but the Navy wanted me back out there, so I got first pick. I was like, I'll take Bahrain. I'd been to Bahrain. Mm-hmm. I've been on Liberty there a few times. I knew what it was like. I knew what the weather was like. I knew what the sort of knew what the culture was like. Mm-hmm. Again, my Liberty was confined to the base, but I'd seen over the wall, so to speak, a little bit. And so I took those orders, and with that came SATCOM communications. So I actually went to Fort Jackson? No, it's not Fort Jackson. It's in Georgia. It's not Fort Bragg.
It's Fort Stewart.
No.
Yeah, that was
It's an army command. I can't remember it now. It's near Athens, Georgia. I can't remember the name of the place now, but that was about 4 months of training of learning satellite communications, just UHF kind of stuff. And then I did a year in Bahrain, and that was a shore command, but it was overseas, and it was so I'm getting all this money thrown at me for the Navy because they wanted people there. It was we'd call it a hot billet towards the end of my tour, but basically it was they needed people out there, and they made it enticing for people to go. I knew I was getting into. I'd been there. I'd been in that region operating. I got my paycheck tax free. I knew what it looked like. I'm more than happy to go back and get this. So I get out there, and it's a 12 on, 12 off kind of deal because we've got limited people, and so you don't get a lot of time at home. It's it's a year. It's you get there and you have a 1 year billet. So within your first 3 months, you have to determine if you're going to extend there or not. And at first, I was like, yeah, I'm going to extend. But after 2 months of being there and seeing what the job was, seeing what these guys were going through and everything like that, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. Because it became I'm here, I'm doing my job, and then I'm going home kind of mentality that they had. And I tried really hard to kind of break that mindset and say, look, guys, we're kind of part of the bigger picture here. But not everybody was seeing that. And it's not because they didn't want to, it's because it was hard. It was really hard. So they're doing 12 on, 12 off, 12 on, 24 off, 12 on, 12 off, 12 on, 48 off. That's the rotation. And you're burned out. You get burned out real fast on it, and you just, I'm not going to ask these guys. Eventually, I stopped asking them to stay late because I understood that their time off was precious to them, So I opted at that time. I needed to go back to sea. So towards the end of my first 3 months there, I was on the phone with the detailer. I was like, I want West Coast. I'd like CG or DDG if I could. That's really my only demands. And he's like, okay, I'll let you know what I get. And then he came back and he's like, I've got a ship. It's a pre-com. We don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to be West Coast deployed or attached. I was like, okay, so it's either going to be in Washington, it's going to be in California, it's going to be in Hawaii. I'm good with all three of those. So I took orders to the USS Chaffee. And then I continued my tour out there. I was the maintenance LPO. I had actually picked up E5 like not long after getting there, which was surprising for me because I didn't feel like I did all that well on the test, but I did. So I picked up E5. That's actually where I met my wife. She was stationed out there as an MA1. She was a cop. We had a mutual friend that we didn't know about from my time at A school. There was an ET1, Peggy Gordon. I met her at Great Lakes because we were forming up for march out to get to class, and I looked over as I'm forming everybody up because I'm the GSE 3 here. I'm the one in charge, as far as the students go. I look over and there's a student on the smoke deck still having a cigarette, and at this point we're not supposed to be smoking. So I go over and it's like, hey, shit, man, you can't have a cigarette right now. We're forming up. This first class petty officer turns around and goes, oh, my apologies. Puts her cigarette out and lines up with me. We didn't fall into ranks when it came to marching. We kind of stayed out to the side and just controlled the traffic. We actually let the students do the driving. We just kind of did the whole, hey, hold up, take it right here kind of deal. And whatnot. And so I met her that way. She's a really cool gal. Well, fast forward to Bahrain now. I've completed all my schooling. I'm working. I turn the corner of the building. There's Peggy Gordon. Hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Kind of my mentality and everything like that. And so, we hit it off and everything like that. Well, she was a songwriter. I was a guitar player. My buddy Kevin, who was stationed out there with me, was a guitar player. She comes up to me one day and she's like, hey, you guys want to do some recordings? We're like, sure, why not? She's like, all right, great. Come on over to my house tomorrow evening. We're gonna play some songs and make some recordings. I was like, okay, great. That's all I knew was going on. So Kevin and I show up, and there's like 15, 20 people at this place. It's a party. She's doing this big. She's brought all her friends here. She's just hitting record on a tape track, and they're playing songs and singing songs, and we're just kind of playing with and having fun and everything like that. And then later on, one of the girls that was there came up and asked me to help her learn guitar because she'd been trying to learn. So next thing you know, here we are. We're about to celebrate 19 years in October.
Very good.
So, so I did my tour out there. Like I said, it wasn't the Navy I knew where everybody worked as a team. That didn't work for me. I tried to bring the team mindset, but then I kind of saw the job, what it was, the toll it was taking on those guys. And I didn't want to push them any further. They were doing what they could. Yeah. Really hard workers. So. At the end of that, I left there and I went to San Diego. I learned that the ship was going to be home ported out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, so that was kind of exciting for me. That came with a 1-year oblaserve on the end of it, so my 3-year billet just became a 4-year billet. But it took, I went to San Diego, did some of the schooling there and whatnot, and then I was fast-tracked to Bath, Maine, where the ship was being built. I was part of the phase 2 crew implementation. So the phase 1 was like the CO, the XO, the combat systems operator. I showed up and I met a senior chief White. He was an FC type, fire controlman, and we're all in the same department, but we're different divisions. But at this point, it's real skeleton crew. It's me and then him, as far as leadership goes for me. He comes up and he's like, "Hey, good to have you on board. You're either going to sink or swim. Here you go." He hands me a stack of papers. He goes, "Figure this out." So I went to the desk and got through all the paperwork and everything like that. Got it done. Finally met my division officer. Davey Perkis was his name. He was a guitar player. So we hit it off right away. We actually, while we were there, because it's like you're building all the programs and everything for the ship, so that when more of the crew gets here, it's more of, okay, here's how we're doing things kind of mentality, instead of trying to herd all the cats and get all the programs built at that point. So, you're doing that, but it's not long days at the office, so to speak. And so one of the things we did, because the holidays were coming up, is quite a few of us got together. We did like a little Christmas choir group, and we went to some of the retirement homes and the nursing homes, and we went through and we'd sing and play Christmas carols for the people there. It really brought a lot of life to them, and it gave you that feel good. I did my part today kind of mentality, just that stuff to break the mundane. I'm in Bath, Maine. I'm not an outdoorsman kind of guy. I'm not into fishing, hunting, which is really big up there. So if you are, that's the place to go. But you find those little things and you keep doing your job day to day. We did about a year there building the ship. The first time we went underway on that ship, 70% of our crew had never been at sea. So,
so when was that?
This was, 2002.
Okay. Now, by this time, 9/11 has happened.
Yes.
And where were you when that happened?
I was in Bahrain.
Okay.
I was actually, I just finished up my shift for the day. I was what they call a day worker. I worked from 8 to 5, and I was walking out, and as I was walking past, they had the news on in the main office, the front office to our building, and the first plane had already hit, and I couldn't move my feet. I was floored. I finally got my bearing, made sure everything was going okay. In the back, we had all our comm circuits up. Surprisingly, things didn't get hot for us for the next few days. But so I watched there for a little bit, watched the first plane had hit and everything like that. My buddy Kevin came up and he saw what was going on, and I was like, "I'm gonna go to my apartment. I'm gonna turn on the news. You're welcome to come hang out with me." So we both went to my place. We brought on the news, and it wasn't long after we watched the second plane hit. And it was just a whole different mindset at that point. Like I was getting my bags packed. I was getting ready to set camp on the base at that point. Kevin kind of went home. It was pretty emotional for us to see this. Like just the loss of life, the act of savagery to create this. There's always risk. This is risk you can't plan for. There's nothing you can do about this. If somebody has enough hatred in their heart, it's going to happen, and that's what this was. It's you can say how did we not see this coming? It never happened before. That's how. The remainder of my time there was pretty intense. As far as it was mission critical. We're in charge of all kinds of communications in that region. So keep the circuits up. That was it. That was our day to day. Just keep the circuits up, because we were a support command for commands that were out there, whether it was troops on the ground or ships in the water, planes in the air. A lot of their communications back and forth ran through our command. That's what we did. And so, they need those lines of communication open. And so that's what we did. We kept that available for them.
But they still let you leave.
We always had Liberty status on the base. Most of our time was dancing between, excuse me, Class Charlie and Class Delta Liberty, which is the strictest. Generally, what would happen is we had a lot of civilian support out there on that base too. People that knew, whether they were old vets that were just coming out, continued their work as a government contractor and whatnot. We had a lot of civilian presence on our base to help us with stuff. And so, if we stay in a Class Delta Liberty status for too long, we have to ship everybody home. But because they were considered mission critical people, what we'd do is we'd go from Delta to a Charlie for a few days, back to Delta, so we didn't have to lose the help that we had, because everybody was there, everybody wanted to do their job. Nobody was ready to go home. The unthinkables happened, and I like to think everybody has a little bit of American flag in them, and everyone's came up and raised up, and they're ready to go at that point for quite some time.
So, but I guess what I'm saying was they did let you switch leave that posting and go on.
Yes.
To the ship. So things were normal enough or functional enough at that point that you could still continue with your career.
Yeah, our rotations didn't get interrupted. We did have reservists get activated, which was a big shake for them, because I'm still considered inactive reserve because I haven't been retired for a full 10 years, but I'm beyond the activate. Do you need to change that?
You're just about there, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So you were kind of laying out kind of how things played out and so forth after 9/11 while you were still in Bahrain.
Yeah. So we had the mission essential civilians that were working with us, and nobody was ready to go home at all. Everybody was, a lot of people were pissed off at this point. And so, they would manipulate the Liberty status, keep us on lockdown so we were safe. Right. Because one of the things we do is when a Navy has a command in a foreign country, they're not going to bring contractors from the U.S. in to do construction work or anything like that. One, even in Germany, if we've got a military establishment in Germany, the electrical system over there is different. They're on a 50 hertz 220 cycle. We're on 60 hertz 110, and so they're going to bring in the local population, which is really good politically speaking. I mean, that's you're helping the economy in the place where you've just taken real estate. So that stops when you go into Charlie and Delta. So you've got all these people that were depending on the U.S. government for employment. They're not getting employment now because they can't get on base to do the work. And so we, manipulate that Charlie Delta, so they can get on, do some work. Okay, we'll see you in a few weeks. We're ready. Kind of, we had a posture we had to maintain, but we also had our, responsibility to the people around us as well that had become dependent upon the U.S. government. So. I think they did a really good job. We never had any incidences, but it wasn't uncommon to come walking around the corner headed for the gate to get on base, and there's a Humvee. You got somebody sitting in the back of it with a 50 cal trained down the road, and you can see other people with their weapons and whatnot, and you knew the weapons were ready. I mean, they may not be hot at the moment, but at a moment's notice, they could be hot. The security posture was definitely different. As far as going out in town, that was done. We weren't doing that anymore. So it's you get up, you get showered, you go to work. You get done with work, you go back to your room. And that was it.
Okay. So when did you actually leave Bahrain?
I departed, I don't remember exactly what month, but I was only there for 11 months. So 2003, I did leave, and I went to USS, or at the time, PCU, Chafee. Pre-commissioning unit Chafee, because it wasn't commissioned, it wasn't actually part of, the government hadn't taken acceptance of the vessel yet. And so at the Chafee, I went as a plank owner because when I went to the Cowpens, there were a couple plank owners still in the engineering department, and various other departments.
Those are people who were there when the ship was commissioned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were there for the commissioning. They They had a lot to do with the building of the programs, and they knew their systems in and out. And those were the guys I went to. Remember, I left the Calpins as an E4 with an EL letter. That's huge. You know, that was, I don't know if it's as big a deal these days, but back then it was a big deal to be an E4. That means the CO is entrusting you with the watch over all of engineering. It's engineering officer of the watch. You're the guy behind the desk. If there's a casualty, you're driving the casualty efforts. So, you know, the CO has to sign off on that and say yes. That's not just, hey, can I get this call real quick? And yeah, sure, you're good, man. You know what you're doing. It's not that. You sit in front of a board with your fellow engineering officer, the watch members, and you go through that, and they ask you a bunch of questions. And then you go do the same thing in front of the CO. And, you know, the CO, don't be fooled. He knows his engine rooms. Don't go in there thinking he doesn't. But he's going to ask you questions, and he knows the responses that he should be hearing from you. More importantly, he's watching your poise, your deportment while you're in there. How are you handling the situation? You're in front of the guy. This is the guy who 3 years ago said, I'm reducing you in rank. And now I'm sitting in front of him saying, hey, I want to run your engine rooms, you know, and everything like that. Big moment for me right there. So now I've taken plank owning orders. You know, I'm going to a pre-comp ship, and I'm going to be those guys, the ones that are helping the other guys out. That was kind of my mindset when I got there. I'm going to learn my systems. I'm going to know all the ins and outs of my systems. And then when I get my team up under me, they're going to know it. I'm going to see to it. That was kind of what I wanted. And that's really the way it played out. Like everybody started coming together. The office got really, really busy. So we started spending less time at the office, more time on the ship. We got to do all kinds of really neat stuff. We went to St. Indigo Isle in Maryland, where they actually, because we had a communication suite, I didn't know this, each communication suite is actually set up and tested at St. Indigo's for our ship anyways, prior to being packed up, sent to the ship, put in, you know, and implemented and working. So it's like everything was working. So what's wrong with it now? You know, it's kind of let's do a FAT on this equipment before we bring it out there and make it active. So so we did that, and we got to see. We didn't get to see ours. Ours was already in our ship, but we got to see 4 ships after ours. I can't remember the name of that one. Theirs was in place, getting tested. You know, because this is each ship from it's probably a 10-year build cycle on these things. From the minute it hits the okay go. The project gets kicked off, you know, to where it's actually launched and everything. So we did that. We did a lot of different. Did the butterfly trainer. That was a lot of fun. Remember I told you 70% of our crew had never been underway. So here I am with a bunch of guys that had never been underway. Damage control on a ship in the Navy is an all hands effort because you don't get the luxury of standing on the curb watching your house burn while the fire department tries to fight it. It's fight or die kind of mentality when you're out there in the middle of the ocean. 1974 USS Forrestal. If you need anything after that to teach you about firefighting being an all hands effort, you don't need to be in the Navy then, because that movie is humbling. It's very. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it, but I have heard of that incident. So.
Yes, we had to watch it when I was going through damage control school. We had to watch that. That was the first thing. They said, all right, any questions? And everybody's just like, some wet eyes in the room. It was really harrowing. So now we're in this butterfly trainer, or wet trainer, if you want to. So they put you in this simulated engine room space. There's about 15 of us. So it's not very simulated because there's too many of us. And they say, you guys ready? We're like, yeah, we're ready. They turn on the waterworks. Leaks spring up everywhere. And so your job is to do damage control efforts and contain the leaks. So you're using pipe wraps and just tightening gaskets and just isolation techniques. You're going through all the steps to get these leaks contained, and then boom, there's just a loud boom. It doesn't happen in your space. You just hear a loud boom, and all of a sudden the water level just starts rising. And that's when everybody starts panicking. Because a lot of these people have never been in these situations before. They haven't had the engineering training like I had. So me and another guy, John Carmack, turned out to become a really good friend of mine. He'd been to sea before, and he'd done this stuff before. I'd been to sea before. I'd done this before. The other 15 hadn't. And so they're all like, what do we do? I was like, all right, get over here, bringing them over to the ladder and everything like that. John's up top, and he's got the hatch open to the ladder so we can get out. I was like, so now we're going one at a time up the ladder, because your feet are wet. And so you don't want to go up these ladders with wet feet, slip, fall down, and hit 3 other people chasing behind you on the ladder. So I'm down there policing the motion up the ladder. John's up the top of the hatch, trying to help him, assisting him getting out. In the further back in the line you are, the more wet your pants are when you get out, because the water level keeps going. By the time I got out of there, it was up to here on me. And we had some big guys getting up those ladders. Maybe 3 people helping them out of the hatch. But it's teamwork, and they kind of learned that if you keep calm and cool, think the problem through, it's not as, chicken with your head cut off kind of effort as you would think. And so a lot of people, when they came out, they're like, wow, that was a lot of fun. Can we do it again? 5 minutes ago, they were freaking out. But now that their adrenaline has kind of settled down and everything like that, they really, they're looking, everybody runs these scenarios through their head. Like, okay, what happened? What could I do? Everybody does that afterthought process. And they realized, hey, not so bad. So we got to do that. That was a lot of fun. Some other team building stuff that we did, and the day came to get underway. And this is the day where the USS Chafee, well, still PCU Chafee at the moment, was to get underway. We had pilots and other people on board the ship from Bath Iron Works because it was not the government ship yet, so we could not take it. But the crew was present. We were all underway on the boat. Everybody had their rack where they were going to sleep. Everybody knew the routines, where their workstations were at this point. We'd gone from a bunch of guys in an office space to a crew on a ship, and we're getting underway. I'd been underway before, and I'm topside Navy now because I'm in combat systems as an ET. So I get to stand out on top and breathe more of that fresh air. I'm also a non-smoker at this point in my life, so I'm actually breathing the fresh air. There were times we got so close to the shoreline, I thought we were going to get hit with tree branches, just because of the channel, how narrow it is, or shallow it is on some spots, and you have to just kind of. And that's why we have Bath Iron Works. If we were driving that ship, who knows? Again, 70%, never been to sea before. So we went to Providence, Rhode Island. We pulled in there, and that's where we did the commissioning ceremony, and that was a spectacle. Somebody thought it was a really good idea. One of the things you do in the commissioning ceremony is they used to do, all right, crew, take the ship, and then everyone on the crew in their dress whites goes jogging up the gangway, and they man the rails, and they go to their stations, and they bring the ship to life. We didn't do that part. We were already on the ship. Just a safety thing. They decided, it's just too much. We're not going to do that. We're just going to be on. And they gave the order, bring the ship to life. So we're all standing here. We're at parade rest on the lifelines in our Class A uniforms, our dress whites at this point, looking sharp. And certain people are in there. They're firing off the engines. The gun bells start ringing and the guns start swinging. The radar dishes start swinging. And somebody thought it'd be a great idea to just do an air shot out of one of the torpedo tubes. So you got 3,000 PSI in this torpedo tube. And it's pointed off the starboard side over the heads of the crowd. And it's all part of the ceremony. We just didn't think this through. Boosh! It's this loud rush of air comes out of this tube, and you just see it was like Moses was standing there, right? The sea of people move aside, and so we're at parade rest. We're off to the side, kind of out of sight. So a couple of us are full of giggles because this is hysterical. The CO's probably up there sweating a little bit. XO, why the hell are we doing that? I'm sure that conversation happened. But it was really cool to be a part of that ceremony. I did have one very fortunate event I blew past real quick when we were at Bath, Maine. It mentioned it's a 10-year build cycle. Mm-hmm. So you've got one getting their keel laid, one still getting put together, and one that's very near completion. We were the very near completion ship. Mm-hmm. We had bodies, and so I was assigned as an extra duty to help out the USS Mumson, DDG 95, I think. Help them out because they were still doing the christening ceremony. And so the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, John J. Young, is coming to be a part of this, and I was assigned as his driver. So this is the highest ranking civilian in the Navy, and I've just been assigned to drive this guy around. So, you know, come to find out, I took him to a dinner, and at the dinner, you know, he goes in and he eats, and me and my buddy Rodney, we're at the vehicles. He's driving one van, I've got the other van, and we're just at parade rest out there at the vehicles, just looking sharp, doing the military thing. You know, he goes in, he has his dinner, and you know, he hobnobs with the other people that are in this whole thing. And then he comes out, he gets in the car, and we're driving back, taking him back to his hotel and everything like that. And he asked me where I'm from. And I enlisted when I was in Georgia. So, you know, I kind of went through the backstory of how I enlisted when I was in Georgia. And he goes, "Oh, I've got family in Georgia." And I was like, "Oh, really? Where?" And he goes, "Meriwether." Meriwether is one of these little bitty towns. Like, you know, you probably wouldn't, you might find it with Google Earth these days. Maybe it's popped up kind of deal. And I knew people in Meriwether. And so I was like, I've got some family in Meriwether. And he goes, "Oh." I was like, you know, I know how small the town is. So I asked him, I was like, "Well, do you know the Wheelises, sir?" And he goes, "John Wheelis? Yeah, that's who I'm talking about." Come to find out I'm related, you know, through marriage to the highest ranking civilian in the Navy. And at the time, my wife and I had just got married. She was stationed in Italy. I'd flown her in to Bath, Maine, or Portland, Maine, actually. And then from there, we went to Helen, Georgia, which is a Dutch town in Georgia. It's a big tourist town. But that's where we did our marriage ceremony. That's where my mom was living. She set it all up for us. So we went down there, we got married, and then we did our honeymoon in Portland, and then she went back to Italy. She was stationed in Sigonella, Italy. At the time, we're trying to get her orders, you know, because I'm going to Hawaii, so I'm going to be on this side of the earth. She's going to be on that side of the earth. You know, she's still got 3 years on her orders, and I got 4 years coming up on mine. How are we going to do this? What we didn't want to do is be chasing each other for half our marriage across the globe, you know, and everything like that. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I've got some clout here, you know, I've got some pull. I never had to use it. We actually did it legitimately. I didn't want to use it. I was ready to if I had to, but I really didn't want to be that guy, you know. But I think if you're in the military and you have that pull, that's the time you want to use it, you know. Because I met guys that had family that was higher ranking going through my school, various schoolings, and just anytime these guys got in trouble, it seems like it was just swept away. Swept away, and I used to be, I had to take my licks when I got in trouble, you know. So a bit of it's jealousy, a bit of it's what are they learning from this? You know, they're using their clout that way, and I'm like, I think to me, I'm like, this is where you would use it, not that. Mm-hmm. We never had to, thankfully. So, so we get the ship underway from back to where we're at in the story here. Mm-hmm. We leave Providence, Rhode Island. We get underway. We did pull into Boston, Massachusetts Harbor because the USS Constitution, the oldest vessel in commission to this day, was doing it once a year, rotating. Mm-hmm. So, so that, you know, it weathers evenly. So we got to see that. I didn't get to. I was down. I was working on some gear, but you know. The rest of the crew got to. Hey, that's the job. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Everybody's got to do their job so everybody else can, you know, do their job. So, and then we left there. We went to Norfolk. Norfolk, we actually went back up in the yards. There was a problem with the sonar dome. So a lot of us got to go see the screws for the first time. Which is, for me, coming from engineering, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. To get under there and see these massive screws, because these screws do a lot more than what a boat's propeller does. Like mm-hmm. what I have is nothing now compared to what these things do. I mean, they can adjust the pitch on these things mm-hmm. to change the pull, the bite on the water. Okay, we're gonna go backwards. Now we're gonna go forwards. You know, shaft just keeps turning. Just change the pitch. So, gosh, we spent 2 weeks. 2 weeks in Norfolk, Virginia, and we had this guy. He was a TM3 Martinez. Kind of a loose cannon kind of guy, really sharp, undisciplined, a lot like I was. At this point, I'm staying what's called the topside rover watch, which is basically I'm up in the bridge. We've got the bridge wings. I've got an M14 on my shoulder, and I'm watching topside back and forth. That's what I do for 4 or 5 hours and check things, play with the big eyes, look around. You know, we're looking for swimmers in the water. We're looking for threats that aren't there. Mm-hmm. We're in U.S. government. soil, but because of Pearl Harbor, watches were manned 24/7 now throughout the Navy. So, I'm up there, I'm doing my job, I'm looking on the side, no swimmers here, no swimmers there, walking around, playing with buttons, it's a long 5 hours. There's one point, I come up to take the watch, and I get up there, and there's Martinez, and he's got his weapon broken down at parade rest. And I'm like, what's going on here? And he goes, I got bored, so I started taking my weapon apart. I was like, oh, well, call me when you get it back together, and I'll take the watch. And he got in a lot of trouble for that one because he broke his weapon down during his watch, which for no reason. So now he's not equipped to man his watch, so that's a problem. He wasn't ready to turn over the watch on time, and he never actually got the weapon back together. So it wasn't, if he'd gotten it back together, if it had been 2 hours into the watch and he'd gotten it back together, I'd be like, lesson learned? Yeah, that sucked. I was like, all right. But he never even got it back together. So he ended up calling down. I was like, I have a new gunner's mate. So the gunner's mate had to come out there. What the? Gunner's mate, they're a special breed. You don't mess with their weapons if you don't have to. He'd mess with the weapon. So gunner's mate let him have it. Yelled and screamed at him. He lost his qual. He had to requal on the weapon, whatnot. So, that happened. But that was like the only incident while we were up there. We got underway again. This time we were underway all the way to the Panama Canal. And that was my first time going through the ditch, so that was unique for me. That was a long day. Unique experience. I'd highly encourage anybody in the Navy to go through the canal at least once if they get the chance. And then we went to San Diego, spent a few weeks in San Diego, just refitting and whatnot. Crew still needed to walk on dry land for a little bit after that passage. So, and then from there, 2 weeks out, we're at home port, reception and everything like that in Pearl Harbor. Lived there. It was about a year after Pearl Harbor before my wife actually got to join me out there. She joined me. Gosh, she was with us for about 3 months, and then we took the Chafee on her maiden voyage. That was 6 months out straight, going same ports I'd been to before, a couple new ones, but.
Okay, so when was that then that you had this, when you went to sea on the Chafee then out of?
Her first, that was in 2004 that we did. Was it 2004? Because it was 2000 and. I gotta work backwards here. 2004 I think it was. Let's see, it was 2002 I got there. 2003 when she was commissioned. 2004 we went on the deployment, and then 2005, yeah. So it was 2004. We took her out. We did another deployment. Again, it was the same drill I'd done the previous 2 times on the Cowpens. Except now we've got a new crew and whatnot. A lot of time at GQ, just practicing, working up. Fairly uneventful. My grandma did pass away while I was out there. That was kind of heartbreaking for me because I wasn't there for any of it. I couldn't be there for any of it because of where I was. The really heartbreaking part for me was that my wife was pregnant, and I was really ecstatic to introduce my new daughter to my grandmother, who had a huge influence in my life. But now that's not going to happen. We came back from deployment. The day I got back off of deployment was the day my wife did her last day as in the Navy, actually. So we got back off deployment. We went to our house in the Pacific Palisades. We dropped all my gear off. I got changed out of my uniform, freshened up a little bit, and then we went right back to the base. We went to the Personal Support Detachment and got my wife her DD-214 that same day.
And that is the discharge paper.
That is a discharge paper. She did her time honorably. She did 10 years of active duty. She has kind of a storied past like myself. She was an electrician's mate, and then she was a master at arms. So we did that, and then it wasn't long afterwards that we actually left Hawaii, and I didn't know it at the time, but that was my last deployment on a ship in the Navy because everything else that was going to unfurl for me. At this point, I was gunning for chief. I was ET1 at this point, and I really was I ET1? No, I wasn't. I was still at ET2. I wanted ET1, And so what I wanted was my my MTS, Master Training Specialist certification, because that was always looked at favorably on your evaluations. There's a couple gold cards in the Navy. Recruit Division Commander is one of them. MTS is another one of them that you can get as enlisted. So I wanted that, so I took orders back to Great Lakes, this time as an instructor. The global war on terrorism is full throttle at this point. We're knee deep in it. And I get here, one of the first things when I got to Great Lakes, one of the first things my LPO told me, he's like, look, we're fully supporting individual augmentations. I was like, okay, well, what is that? And he goes, well, chances are you're going to go to Djibouti, Africa, you're going to go to Iraq, you're going to go to Afghanistan, you're going to support. Okay, so we go through all of this. You know, I'm like, okay, well, that's the job. You know, that's what I signed up for, everything like that. I go home and I tell my wife, and it's a very emotional time. Yeah, I was like, look, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get ahead of this with you, that we make a joint decision on what it is I do when it comes up. Rather than having to take what they give us, let's be proactive on this and let's just jump on one and go. And she figured out what I was doing. She's like, okay. I was like, so we've got the options. We got Iraq, we got Afghanistan, we got Djibouti. And she goes, well, what is Djibouti, Africa? I was like, it's close to Somalia. You think back to Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down stuff, you know, everything like that. She goes, well, I don't think that's as bad as Iraq or Afghanistan. I was like, okay, so it's agreed. And like 2 weeks later, I'm sitting there, we're doing quarters. Everybody stands together, you know, we just kind of put out the plan of the day, and they're like, all right, we've got open billets for augmentations. We knew it was coming. And then we've got one for Djibouti. I'm like, put my hand up. Brian's like, okay, ET1 Brunn. ET2 Brunn, Djibouti, Africa. So it went up the chain, and I got approved for the billet. Then I went to Fort Jackson for 2 months of training, which is where I worked with reserve drill instructors on basic Army tactics stuff. You know, here's what it means. Here's how you put your kit on. Here's how you shoot your weapon, kind of stuff. Which I wasn't unfamiliar with guns. I'd done numerous weapon firing evolutions in the Navy and as a civilian as well, just going to gun ranges and shooting. So having the M4 wasn't unfamiliar for me. And, you know, we go through all this training. It's a lot of fun. At the end, everything culminates into one big exercise. They put me on the QRF, which is the Quick Reaction Force, for this exercise. So it's me. We've got an SKCS supply clerk, senior chief, submariner type with us. So he's a different breed. We've got one guy who's a reservist, but he's an actual cop in Chicago. So we're like, okay, this guy's good to have on the QRF. Put him on the QRF. And then we had another guy. The other guy was he was an RN. I remember him. And he was a reservist. So he'd been activated. So there's 2 full active and 2 reservists. It's kind of a hodgepodge crew, but we all knew the drill, so we drilled. We went through the exercises together as a team. We pretended we'd draw stuff on the ground, and we're doing this. We gamed it, and we worked really well together. Everybody clicked. Everybody knew their role. Then the exercise happened. It's like you train for one thing, and then in typical Army fashion, they throw you into a whole different situation, keep you thinking on your feet and whatnot, and we weren't ready for that. So everybody's kind of thinking on their feet, but you know, it's go time, so you don't have a lot of time to huddle up. Okay, here's the game plan. They threw cell phones and guys with cameras on us. We're going into this, they've got this whole scenario, this Connex boxes, like the mayor's boxes that you saw in Captain Phillips, the container ships, right? They've got those set up like a city. And there's picket fences around them. Each one's a different building. There's some of them stacked to make buildings with stairs inside of them and whatnot. And so our job was, you know, we had a guy who had a hostage, you know, in the scenario, and we had to go secure the hostage. Well, none of us really trained for this. You know, we've been through the basic stuff. Here we are. So we had to go across this big open area, and we get there, and there's a guy on a phone, so you got to secure the guy with the phone. You got to get the phone from the guy because he could be sending messages to the other guy you don't know. So, you know, hey, worst case scenario, just secure the guy, secure the phone, kind of that stuff. That caused a little bit of drama on the team that we weren't ready for because we'd never done that. And then the other one was we went into the room, and when we went into the room, like we peeled into the room like we were supposed to. We set the door, and then we were just in a room and it had a staircase, and we'd never done staircases. So, crap, we got to figure this out right now. So we sent a point up the stairs. I followed up the stairs. We both made it to the top of the stairs. And we had the hostage and the other guy. But at this point, you don't know who's who. You don't know if the hostage has been given the weapon and they're just upset and they're holding it against. You don't know. So you have to just secure them both, get them both down, let things unfurl that way. So there's stuff all over the floor. It's really poorly lit in here. It's dark. I've got my weapon up, trained on the scene. He's got his weapon trained on the scene, but he's about to advance and secure the scene. So he hands me his weapon. And so I take his weapon and I set it down. He advances. I keep my weapon trained. Senior chief was the one, during all our training, he was the one that we'd practiced putting the cuffs on the guy. So he's coming up for his moment. And really, I'm trying to tell him to stop because there's no room up there. It's just small and compact. I don't know if he didn't see me. There's a lot of yelling going on, so I don't know if he couldn't hear me or anything like that. I'm trying to tell him to stop. There's not enough room. He's not stopping, so I start moving over a little bit. I guess we're gonna have to make room because he's coming up, kind of deal. I can't take my attention away from the scenario in front of me because, my teammate's up there and it could become life-threatening for him and he's depending on me. So I can't take my attention away from that. I can't just stop and, okay, hey, timeout, guys. We gotta figure this out. So he keeps coming up the steps. I don't know how my teammate and I missed it. Scene chief found it. We heard a click, big black smoke. They had a charcoal grenade set as a booby trap on the stairs. Apparently the first two, we both stepped over it, and as soon as she found it, because he was being very diligent in his steps. So that ended the scenario right there. Everybody's dead. All right. It wasn't that we get to them and we secure them and everybody's happy and goes home to dinner. This kind of scenario it was, you're going to be in these situations. You could potentially be in these situations where it's out of control and you have to think on your feet and you have to work together kind of mentality. So we're sitting there, the four of us are sitting there powwowing about what went wrong. And, this is typical military thing. It's the after action. After you do a drill, everybody sits around and talks about what went wrong. What do we do better next time? That's just how we get to the level that we operate at. But we're all doing it differently this time because now we've got our faces covered in charcoal. So we're all like, just this nasty black charcoal coming out. We were all laughing about the grenade and he's like, how did you guys not even step on that thing? Why is it on me? That's kind of the humor that you have for these situations. It's like, okay, we've addressed the problems of what we could have done better and what we need to work on. Knowing full well that none of us are going to see each other again because we're all going different places. In fact, Senior Chief was going to Iraq. The cook was going to Afghanistan. The Chicago police guy was actually going back to his house. He was just going through the training, and I was going to Djibouti. So after all of that training, I went to Djibouti, and I was there for 6 months. I did a month of it, or 2 months. I was working for TACNet, Tactical Networking. We were in charge of, again, communications for the region, for everybody. And after about 2 months of supporting remotely, I was tapped on the shoulder to go to Uganda and spend a month down there. So I spent 3 months down there. So I went to Uganda and I spent 2 months I spent a month with the Old Guard out of Washington, D.C., Army unit. And they predominantly did like funeral services and stuff. Thank Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That was really their gig. That's what they did. But they were over there doing mill-to-mill training on Uganda's People's Defense Force, which is the long verbiage of the Ugandan army. Mm-hmm. They were training them up, and then those guys were getting sent to Somalia. So we were down there doing mill-to-mill training on them. I was basically giving them connectivity, helping out around the camp as best I could and everything like that. Really good group of guys. If you ever get the chance to work with the Army, it's a lot easier than working with the Navy. Because in the Navy, I'm like, hey, Chief, I kind of need some extra bodies over here. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I scratch your back, so you got to come over here and scratch mine. And you go through this whole political game of, push-pull until you get what you need. With the Army, I go find Sergeant Taditi. Hey, Sarge, I got to take that generator and get on top of this vehicle so we can go get maintenance done. He's like, how many Joes you want? I mean, it's done. It's that easy. I don't know, 3. Hut, 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 hut. It's up. And it's done. And they're gone. It's great. Great people, actually. So I did 2 months. I did a month with them, and then I did a month with a joint unit, and we stayed in Uganda area, but we moved around a lot. And again, giving them reach back with their the connectivity, so they could get emails back and forth to command, make phone calls if they needed to, stuff like that. That was a lot of fun. And then I went back to TACnet for a month so I could kind of get back on cycle and get ready to go home. And so that turned out to be 8 months that I was gone on my IA. I came home, and because I did the IA, I could add I could take a year off of a seashore rotation, or add a year on to or take a year off my sea rotation, or add a year to my shore rotation. So I added a year on. So I actually did 4 years at Great Lakes. During that time, I did achieve my MTS that I wanted. We restructured the curriculum so that it was more effective. First thing I noticed when I got there was that it was very hands-off training. Everything was kind of like, just go through the motions, here's your certificate kind of deal. And then we started getting feedback from the fleet that our product was not of the quality that they wanted. Being the students weren't learning enough. They were not the level that was expected. And we took that as a mark, we took that and owned it. And we redeveloped our curriculum, how we did it. We started trials. We had pilots running. By the time I left the command, we'd started actually implementing the actual course on all the classes. And we'd gotten great reviews at this point from the pilot programs that these guys are the caliber we expect.
Because when you went through, you had a lot of hands-on work, right?
Yes.
And that had kind of fizzled out, or?
Yes. So it'd gone from an instructor role to a facilitator role. So I'm going to sit in a classroom as the facilitator. At this point, I'm ET1. And my job is to sit here, and I have gunner's mates, interior communications techs, fire controlman, and ETs in my class. And everyone's on a self-paced program. So they're just going through this computer-based content. Once they're done, they have permission to go test. And then they go to another room and they take a test. If they pass the test, they come back and they move on to the next content module. Very reminiscent of the college that I tried to go through, where it was just open the book and study kind of deal. And it didn't work for me. And if they had questions, maybe I could answer it. Probably couldn't, because I've got interior communications, which I kind of know because I worked with those guys, but I'm not qualified on that. Gunner's mates, I kind of know because I know what a gun does. I don't know what gunner mate does, but I know what the gun part does. Fire controlmen, similar to ETs, they go through a similar pipeline, but theirs is more radar intense. And again, I went through that comms portion, so not the radar portion. So there's that. That was part of the problem, because if I couldn't answer the question, I just got to go go to this classroom, talk to FC1, he'll answer your question. So then the student goes there, and FC1's got 5 students in line waiting to talk to him. So now my student's got to get in line, and he gets through the queue, and maybe FC1 can answer the question, maybe he can't. Maybe he's got to go to FC3, maybe FC2, I don't know. It was frustrating for me to watch these guys. Like, I lost good students, like guys that were, they were putting in the work and everything like that. They just weren't getting this expected day status or a high enough GPA, but they were putting in the work. And I went in front of my chiefs. I was like, you can't drop this guy. This is the guy I want in my workshop. I want him working for me because he's there doing the work. He's doing it. He's getting it. So he's not testing well. That doesn't mean he's not good. It just means he's not testing well. That means there's a problem with our system. Somebody puts in the hours that he does and still doesn't get it, there's something else going on. And, we had this fight numerous times, and we won most of them, but there were times we just couldn't do it. It was just too expensive for the Navy to keep the student in. He's going to go to the fleet undes, he can strike later. And you hate that, because they're going to go to the fleet undesignated. They're going to already have a chip on the shoulder. They're going to a sour taste in their mouth for this, after all that effort and everything like that. And now just to see they've got a summit in front of them that they've got to get up. Nobody wants that. So, we all kind of collected together and we said, we're failing our students. That's how we address this. That we're failing our students. We're not giving them the training that they need. We need ETs in a class that's led by ETs. We need FCs in a class led by FCs. Forget this day status. Everybody's on their own pace. Forget that. I get that it keeps the backlog in the barracks down, but you're not producing a sailor. You're just running somebody through a meat grinder and sending them out the door. We need ET's taking care of the ETs, FC's taking care of the FCs, because I can't tell an FC what he needs to know. I don't know. So that became the pilot program. We did an ET class, we did a FC class, we did a couple IC classes, gunnermate classes, being led. We call it lockstep. Everybody goes through together. We weren't getting rid of the computer-based training. The Navy had spent too much money on that, so the students still went through the computer-based. But what we did was we used it. So they would go through that, and then the instructor would hold a review over what they went through and what they learned. The instructor, because we all get schematic books for every equipment we learn. Each area content is based off of a piece of equipment designed to teach principles. But it's all stuff that's been used in the fleet. It's really, really well designed. Training is just, the implementation was flawed. So we took that equipment and pull out the schematics, and the instructor would put it on the board and go through it with everyone. So you didn't have people being left behind and find. If you ever fail at something and then you fail at it again, it can be really hard to finish it and not just throw it away. And that's what was happening. People were they weren't getting this concept, and they go through and they would fail. Okay, send them back, let them go through it again, and then they would fail again. It becomes unsurmountable for these students. These are kids. They haven't been through this stuff yet. They don't know. They haven't dug in on something yet, and just throwing these obstacles in front of them like this. So I get it. It was a cost savings thing, and a lot of times, Lean Sigma 6, all that stuff. But the cost savings was outweighing the quality of the product, and it just wasn't effective. So, so they went back to lockstep. Everybody's getting trained by, the right rates now. They're going through it as a group. Go back to the boot camp where the yelling worked, because you started seeing the teamwork develop. Everybody's helping. Just whether they didn't want to do push-ups again or not, or they just saw a guy struggling, the goodness of their heart, they wanted to help. It helped. It happened in the classrooms too. You come in, you have groups, and they'd have schematics out there highlighting, and everybody's doing the same thing, and they're making notes and everything like that. So, bomb diggity, it's doing it. It's working, and we started making a better product for the fleet. Did that, finished up that tour in 2010. Then I went to Special Boat Team 2-2 out of Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, which is a riverine unit. That was a challenging detail for me. It was a spec war unit, so it was a whole different mindset.
Spec war. What's
Special warfare.
Okay.
They weren't SEALs, but they were really close. So SEALs have their mission and what they do. The SWCC, Special SWCC units, Special Combatant Warfare Warrior, something like that. So you've got these SBs, Special Boat Operators. What they do is they focus. Their primary mission is the insert extract of the SEALs in a hostile environment. So they've got these boats that zip around. They've got a lot of guns on them, and they've got all this, this other training that SEALs get as well, and whatnot. And their primary mission would be like, boom, bring this boat right up to the shore. SEAL team goes running off, hut. Boat backs up, clears the X, and then the SEAL team's in. They do their job. Hey, we need a hot extract. What was the movie? Act of Valor. You'll get to see the unit that I was in. There's a scene in there. They bring one of these boats in with a helicopter. I don't know. Have you seen Act of Valor? Okay. So there's a scene in there. They bring the boat in, and they're bringing it in by helicopter, and they drop it in the water, and then the team jumps in, and they set the boat up, and boom, they're off on the waters again and everything like that. That's the command that I was at, and that's the unit I was with. In fact, the guy goes, Roger, which doctor we got? I knew that guy. That was Master Chief Billy Jordan. Really good guy. And everything like that. So it was a lot of fun. One of my guys was the stunt driver where the vehicle went in the water. That was a challenging unit for me because it was like I had a great group of guys. I did great with my troop. The SB guys that I was with, I actually didn't mesh well with my unit that I was assigned to, because I was assigned to Special Boat Team 22. I worked in the ET shack with the guys, maintaining the equipment and the everything. Excuse me, maintaining everything. But I meshed well with the other ETs and ITs in the unit. I didn't mesh well with my leadership, and it was an expectations thing. There were unspoken expectations that neither one of us were meeting, and it just kind of escalated. And you would think at this point in my career I would have noticed that and addressed it, but I didn't. And so it was a short 2.5 years for me there. Basically, it came to, hey, you're coming up on retirement and we're not going to let you extend here, so you're going to have to get orders elsewhere. So I did what I do best, and I came back up here as an instructor. I got signed the lead instructor role up here, and I got to nurture, not just the students, because I wasn't really working directly with the students so much as I was the staff. My job was to make sure that the instructors were doing their jobs properly. At the end of the class, the end of the course, the students would do surveys on the course, on the instructor, and on the facilities and the content. My job was to review these surveys and then address any concerns that came up with the instructors with them. And if it needed to go further, then it goes further. And I had some challenging instructors. One of them became one of my best friends, Nick Pierce. Still in touch with the guy. He's out in San Diego finishing up his 20 right now. He'll be retiring real soon. We had a problem child. His name was Antoine Solomon. He's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. He was a problem child because the Navy wasn't a good fit for him. He was smart. He knew what he was doing. He had a heart for his students. It was the military side that he had issues with. And he's out. He's living in Florida. He's having the life he's always wanted. He's better off for it. And it's just I always told my students when I was on my first tour, I was like, look, you raised your hand, you said I do. You're married for at least the next 5 years. Honor your commitment. Whether the Navy is for you or not, honor your commitment. You said I do. The Navy said I do. Finish your tour. Take your benefits. If it's not for you, set up when you get out and take your benefits. Use your GI Bill. Use your VA. All of it, and everything like that. Take this time to get some college knocked out while you're in, to learn some skills, so when you get out, you're marketable. You're not going back to Burger King, flipping patties, and everything like that. Some people took it to heart and they did that. They're like, yeah, the Navy's not for me, I'm getting out. I was like, okay, great. What can I do for you to get out? Some people, they just like, no, man, after this, I'm good now. They go do something stupid, get in trouble to get kicked out, and then they lose everything. They've lost it. It's gone. That time in their life, just exit off, Solomon's one of those guys, he's like, yeah, Navy's not for me, I'm getting out. He got tired of its government. He got tired of the government, the red tape, the bureaucracy, all of that gets in the way. He's like, but he wanted to make good changes. He just didn't like the resistance he got in the fights that he had to do with. I get it. Dealing with the government can be difficult. They're funded by taxpayer dollars. They don't have a supply and demand that they have to adhere to, like a civilian sector does. But yeah, that's it. So, lead instructor was my last official job. They offered me the LPO of the schoolhouse. I told them no. I declined it because I'd conceded at that point in my career. I kind of had a turmoil point as I was getting closer at the end of my career, that dealing with the fact that it was coming to a close. What am I going to do next? I don't know. By the time I got up to Great Lakes, I had already conceded that this was my last tour. I would be getting out at 20. I would retire as an ET1. And I'm okay with that. I've had a good run. I've met great people and everything. So I took that time. My buddy Nick calls it my twilight years, or my sage years. He called it my sage years, to pass on what I knew, what I had learned, through my trials and my tribulations to the younger generation that were coming up. Not just the students, but the leadership in the schoolhouse too. A lot of at this point, I'm coming up on 40 years. A lot of my leadership is younger than me. We had an OSC. He'd been in the Navy for 7 or 8 years. He was one of the fastest E7 advancements ever. He got in trouble, and he got in trouble similar to when I got in trouble back in 95, 96. So I went and talked to him. I was like, hey, it's not the end of the road, man. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, look at me. He's like, but I'm already a chief. I was like, I get that. But you're early on enough in your career you can recover from this. I've met chiefs more senior than you that have had this exact same problem, and they've recovered from this, and they've gone on. It's up to you. I wanted to give him that support that I had, kind of deal. that I needed and I utilized. And he's still in the Navy. He's still doing it. So good on him. We all make mistakes. Mm-hmm. We all have those moments where we make immature decisions and whatnot, and that's where your family and your friends really come in. You're gonna find out who's real and who's not at that point. So.
Okay. So you go out after 20 years. Now, did you have a plan of what you were going to do next, or did that take a while to figure out?
I had an idea. God had a plan. So, come the end of I'm about a year and a half out. I'm going through what's called the TAPS GPS, or was it Transition GPS class? It's what they used to be called TAPS. It's an act of Congress. Anyone getting out of the military has to go through Transition GPS class. Whether they're getting out honorably or dishonorably, they have to go through it. Transition GPS, goal, plan, succeed. In 1995, when I wanted this job, I just walked in the office and said, "Hey, I need a job." Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Great, sign here." Yeah. That was it. Done. I had a job. I shipped out a week later. At this point, I knew it wasn't that easy. I didn't want to go to Burger King. I wanted a career. I didn't want a job. So the first thing I learned was, during the class was networking and resume writing. What's a resume? I don't know. I have a resume. So resume writing, interviewing, skills like that, stuff I'd never done. So about a year to a year and a half out, I started going to job fairs and whatnot, and just kind of walking around, taking pamphlets about companies, just getting a feel, meeting people, kind of shaking hands, rubbing elbows with them, whatnot, just interacting with people so I could see what it is that they're wanting. Mm-hmm. And learning how to change the military jargon to civilian sector speech, so that when I say, "Oh, I'm an ET1, I was in charge of," start rattling all these nomenclatures off, and if I'm standing in front of other ETs, they're all like, "Ooh, me too." That thing's great. Oh, did you ever have the problem with the thing? When you did the thing and then fixed it? Yeah, me too, man. You have those moments, but that's in the military. I do that in the civilian sector. They're all like, "I don't know what any of that means, man. Can you change the verbiage so I understand more what you did?" Learning to do that. It was October of 2014. I met a guy named Ernest Benson who worked at Orion Talent, which is a job placement specialist for veterans company. They're based out of Ohio. I met him, and he talked me through the process. He's like, "Here's what we do. We take your resume, and we're going to kind of help you with it a little bit as far as the format and the verbiage. Make sure it's good for what you're actually interviewing." I learned that there's multiple resumes that you should carry. If you're looking for a project management position, you need a project management resume. You don't just need, "Here's my resume. Here's everything I can do in the world. Here's my life." You can't do that. You've got 2 to 3 pages at the most that you have to capture everything. You got to tell them what you can do. You got to shock and awe them on how you do it, and get them call you back. So they take that and they're like, "Okay, change this resume this way, change that resume that way," and then they have hiring conventions. They go around in San Diego, Norfolk, Chicago, big cities, Miami. They do these hiring conventions, and what they do is they find veterans that are in those areas that are seeking jobs, and they find companies that are hiring, and they put the two together. So they called me up. They were like, "Hey, we're doing a hiring convention this weekend. Can you go?" I was like, "Sure." I'm on the end of my tour. I show up just to show up at this point. Mm-hmm. My job at this point is more about getting all my paperwork in line to get out of the Navy and be ready to go than it is about being present for muster and doing all that stuff at this point. So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." They're like, "All right, great. Sunday and Monday, the days we need you. Sunday, we'll sit down. We'll talk about going through an interview. We'll talk to you about the companies, what they're looking for, and then Monday you'll do interviews." I was like, "Okay." And they sent me a list of the companies that were going to be present. I got to go through the want ad that they had out and say, "Okay, I'm interested in this one. I'm interested in this one. I'm interested in that one. No to these." So I showed up Sunday, and this was in Schaumburg. Yep, Schaumburg, at the Embassy Suites in Schaumburg. You can see it right there off the 55. And sit down, I'm in slacks and a polo, and we're going through just, here's how you sit in an interview. Take your watch off so you don't keep looking at the watch. Tricks like that, Do's and don'ts. Don't say, oh, well, I got out on this day. You got out of what, prison? Say, well, I finished my active service on this day. Just little things that, like I said, military says it one way, civilian sector says it another way. Little things like that, how to sit, how to knock, how to enter, when to sit. If they take you out to dinner, do you have a drink with them? What if they're having a bourbon on the rocks? Do you have a bourbon on the rocks? Do you have water? Those things. They teach you that stuff. They just kind of coach you through it. Then the second half of the day, they were telling us all about this company's looking for this role. If you don't have this, don't even apply, even if you thought maybe your skill set was going to get you past that. They refused. They've already said, so, okay. And then they post the interview schedule. So tomorrow where you have to be on what time and everything like that. And so Monday I show up, I'm in my suit and tie, which was overdressed for what I was doing at the time. I didn't know it, but now I've gotten a little bit more educated in the process. But hey, better look sharper than not sharp enough. So I showed up in suit and tie. First interview I had was Domino Amjet. They were looking for an installation, they called it installation engineer, to put in inkjet printers, which I didn't even know anything about. So, I'd done some research on the company and everything like that. I go to the room, my interview was at 8:30, knocked on the door, and they said, come on in. I sat down, did the interview. I felt things went well, shook hands, left. 30 minutes later, I had another interview, so I went to that room, knocked on that door. I got into that interview. This was with a guy from Myanmar. They make diesel engines and various other things too. And I'm sitting down talking with him, and he goes, tell me a little bit about yourself. And, this is where I got to take 20 and make it 5. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going through my history in the Navy and why I would be attractive to them. And halfway through my description, I realized I don't even know what I'm interviewing for at this. What position am I interviewing for? I don't even know. And so a moment of shock hit me and everything like that. And then I started touching on schematics readings and everything like that. And he goes, oh, wait, you can read schematics? I was like, well, sure. Yeah, I can read schematics. And he goes, okay. You can really read schematics? I was like, sure, you got some? And he goes, no, all of a sudden he's on his back foot. I'm like, wait, this is a weird dynamic. He's on his, no, okay. So, yeah, all right, great. I would love to hire you now. And I was like, well, I'm not available now. He's like, okay, no problem. When are you going to be available? I was like, March. Yeah, it's October. I wasn't trying to waste their time. I thought Orion had made it known to these companies that I was actually practicing. That's really all I was going for, was practice. If they made it known to his company didn't let him know. I felt bad because I took a half hour of his time, and I'm ready in March if you want. And he goes, I wish I could hire you now. I can't. I don't think I can wait till March, man. I'm sorry. So I was interviewing. At that point, I was like, okay, I probably just need to go ahead and cancel my interviews because I don't think the word's gotten out that I'm just practicing and I don't want to waste people's time. So I went home. That was Monday. Wednesday, I got a phone call from Domino. They're like, hey, we want to do a second interview. Okay. Can you be in Downers Grove on Thursday? I was like, sure. So Thursday evening, I went and had my second interview with Domino. That was 45 minutes of bloodshed. There's 3 people on the panel. Mark Keller, Chris Knuth, and Brian Tannehill. One was the maintenance service manager. One was the installation manager, and one was the regional service manager. So I had 45 minutes of bloodshed with them on some really tough questions, but at the end, everybody we were all getting along. Everybody was talking plainly. There wasn't a lot of nervousness in the room or anything like that. I think I got their questions right and whatnot. Friday, Orion calls me up, and they're like, hey, Honeywell's got bunch more positions they just opened up, and we think one's really good for you. I was like, oh, okay, great. And they're like, where are you at with Domino? I was like, well, I just had my second interview. Wait, hold on. You just had a second interview? I have no idea how this is supposed to work. Mm-hmm. This guy sounds... He's like, I can't go anywhere with Honeywell until I find out about Domino. I was like, okay. So next Monday, I called Chris. I left him a message. I was like, hey, man, I'm not really sure how this works. I just got off the phone with Orion. They want to know where we're at with our second interview because they want to send me to another interview. But we got to figure this out. I don't know. Give me a call kind of deal. Tuesday, Domino calls me up. It's Christine from HR, and she's like, "Hey, I've got the offer for you here. I'm gonna get it finalized, and then we'll get it over to you." I was like, "Okay." She goes, "I'm just gonna run it down for you. It's this, 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 and this. Let me know what you think. Once you get the official offer, if you accept, just sign it and bring it back to us." I was like, "Okay, great. You know I'm not available till March." They're like, "Yeah, we know." Okay. So, so I got the offer, sat down, talked with the wife. It was everything we wanted. Like we had everything we wanted. We knew what we wanted for salary and location, all that. She, we're good with it. So I took the job with Domino. January 30th, I had my retirement ceremony with the U.S. Navy, my last day in uniform. February 2nd, I was sitting in the offices of Domino Amjet out of Gurnee, Illinois. Started work as an installation engineer. Did 3 years as an installation engineer on the coding and marking side, which is inkjet printers and lasers and all that. Then I took a position as an installation engineer for the digital printing press that we now have. And then just in the beginning of this year, January, I took a position as project manager. So I will say the training I've gotten in the Navy has been crucial to my success, and it's helped me. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for it. So.
All right. Well, that actually answers what would be my last question, which is what did you take out of the Navy experience?
Everything I can.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story today.
Sorry I was so long-winded. You're already checking the second tape. It looks like it.